Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PA Path Podcast. Before we get started, we would like to thank our episode supporter, Southern Illinois University Medicine online Doctor of Medical Science degree, now enrolling for 2025. Today, we speak with Chandra Lynch, Program Director for Baldwin Wallace University. Chandra has over 14 years of clinical experience as a PA in various fields, including neurology, bone marrow transplant, and primary care. Prior to coming to BW in 2012 to help develop the PA program, she served as the academic coordinator for the Tri-C Cleveland State University Physician Assistant Program.
Chandra, thank you so much for joining Steph and I today on the podcast. We're excited to learn about your program. But before we dive into the program specifics, let's learn about your path to becoming a PA. How did you choose to enter the profession, and what was part of that path for you to getting into PA education?
I've been a PA since 2002. So back at that time, there wasn't as much recognition of the profession. So I actually, when I graduated from college the first time around, I was a lab technician. And I learned about PA through working at the hospital, and that's how I decided to become a PA. I was specifically working in a lab, an HLA lab that was doing typing and cross-matching for bone marrow transplant, and I worked with some of the PAs in that department. I became a PA. I went to PA school and graduated in 2002, and after that, I worked in a couple specialties, neurology, bone marrow transplant, and then ended up in family practice.
And while you were in family practice, what kind of gave you the bug to think about PA education?
I think it was something I had always considered that I would do eventually, but it was just basically opportunity. There was a position for an academic coordinator that was posted from the school that I had actually graduated from. It came maybe a little sooner than I had anticipated in 2009, but I made that transition and I've been in academia ever since.
And then in 2012, you became one of the founding faculty for the Baldwin Wallace University PA program. So can you talk a little bit about that decision to leave an established program and be part of a more of an entrepreneurial experience of starting a new program?
I thought it would be exciting. And it was. It was an opportunity to build something from the ground up instead of always building upon what was already there. And I had some ideas that I was hoping that we could incorporate into just doing something new. So it was a great decision. We ended up having a great team here, and many of the founding members are still here.
So what were some of the things that you wanted to do differently? And having started a PA program, it was a really great opportunity to just think creatively about what we wanted the curriculum to look like and what we wanted the student experience to look like. What were some of the things that when you were developing the program that you thought, here are the things that we want to do that make it different, that make it stand apart a little bit?
I think one of the things was, and this was selfish on my part, but in the former program I came from, the clinical medicine series was not being taught by PAs. And I really felt that should be taught by PAs and to have our perspective. Not that other disciplines aren't important to incorporate in your curriculum, but I felt like a lot of that should be coming more driven from PAs, and not just clinical PAs, but then PAs in education that are participating in things like PAEA and seeing where the education is, the direction that we're heading. So that was a big thing for me, to be a little more involved in teaching aspects instead of just an administrative aspect. We also developed a program. We have some features of our program, for example, a cadaver lab that we didn't have before. So we had that opportunity to incorporate that. A focus on broadening our partnerships with our clinical preceptor sites and those types of things, and being able to offer a few more electives for our students.
So what was the circumstance under which you transcended to the program director's seat? I'm always interested to hear. There tend to be a couple of different routes that people take into leadership into a program, and I usually follow a couple of fairly common themes. So I'm curious to hear your story.
It felt, I think, like a natural progression. We did have other members who had been here as founding members who had been here for a long time. I had been in academia the longest. I had recently decided that at some point maybe I did want to do a little more. I had expressed that interest. I had gotten my MBA. I had started my PhD. I had served in some leadership positions in the university and other capacities. So it was, I think, a natural transition. And I know that the former director talked with all of the faculty here to make sure everybody was going to be okay with that. And we were.
That had to be really fun for you because Jared Pennington, your founding director, he is the leadership guy too. He was part of the Leadership Mission Advancement Commission at PAEA, and he's one of the two key authors of the leadership framework that PAEA has been using for leadership development. So talk a little bit about that transition with Jared, and then what are those aspects that kind of entice you to focus on leadership for your PhD?
I felt for those of us in PA education, really, most of us come from a clinical background. And so the terminal degree really is a master's degree. You're seeing more and more PAs now going towards that doctorate. It's often a clinical doctorate. And I know institutions are very different across the board on this. Some prefer a PhD, some prefer an EDD. Our institution isn't really all that picky, but I thought that for me, a PhD was the route to go. I thought it gave me a little more flexibility. I do plan to stay in academics at this point in my career. So I don't think that I would ever go back to full-time clinical work, even though I maintain a little of that. So that was the choice for the PhD for me. It's been wonderful having Jared as a mentor. He continues to be a mentor. He's right down the hall. He hasn't left the building. It's really great to have that resource. I feel a little bit spoiled because I'm sure a lot of program directors don't have that. But he's also been a huge advocate for our program now, having that foot in administration. And it's been really helpful what they've created, both our dean and Jared as an associate dean. What they've created at the institution here is a lot more awareness about the health sciences programs. We're not the typical academic programs. We have graduate programs. We have accreditation needs. We're the special needs people that have a lot of things that maybe administration doesn't always understand. So it's really been wonderful having that influence.
I don't know the data on this, but I have to believe that probably less than 5% of PA directors have an MBA. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how that has informed you as a leader of a program, and maybe how that's also contributed to your PhD work.
I think some of the things that I did in the MBA, I think were geared towards, we have a lot of engineers that come to our program. So a lot of the MBA was geared towards those sorts of things. I'm never going to be making wagons in a factory somewhere, so I don't have to worry about sourcing. But I think the budgeting was a huge education for me because I didn't really have a lot of knowledge about that. So I would say that learning how budgeting, and now being in my PhD, and my PhD focuses in leadership and higher education. So then taking the budget to the next level has been extremely helpful.
Let's take a quick break for a word from this episode's supporter, the Southern Illinois University Medicine online Doctor of Medical Science degree. Are you ready to move forward in your career? Enroll in an online Doctor of Medical Science degree with Southern Illinois University Medicine. In 1 year, you can refine your clinical and scholarly skills and become a better advocate and leader. You can earn 37 Category 1 CME credits for your coursework without leaving your job or family behind. Apply today. To learn more, visit the website at siumed.edu/DMSC and register for the virtual information session. So we're interested to hear a little bit more about Baldwin Wallace, about the program, and some of the things that make it unique. How do you feel like it sets itself apart for applicants who are considering your program?
Sure. I mentioned already, we do have, I think our students really value the state-of-the-art cadaver lab, and we have an instructor that teaches that not only is a PhD in anatomy, but he also has a clinical background. He's an EMT, so he can incorporate some clinical stuff along with it. We are really proud of not only our pass rates on PANCE, which obviously is something I always think the low-hanging fruit that anyone can, when researching a program, can see that. We also have lower than average national average attrition rates. I think that speaks to the rigor of our program, but we're also able to provide a lot of one-on-one instruction with our students to get them successful. And really, one of the things that I think probably maybe isn't something that's super obvious to students when they're looking for a PA program, but our low faculty attrition rates. We have a lot of our founding faculty here, and until recently, when we had promotions and retirements, we hadn't had a new faculty member since 2015. I think the fact that our faculty stay here shows that they're really dedicated to the program. We have things really streamlined because we don't have a lot of turnover. And I think it shows that people are relatively happy. They're able to spend time with the students and they're willing to do that. And I think that kind of makes our program feel like a family a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you raise a really good point there. And I think it's probably something that applicants to PA programs maybe don't have the context to understand how important a low faculty turnover is. Mm-hmm. There's an old adage that probably our listeners who are PA educators know, but maybe others who are clinical practice or an aspiring PA or PA student might not know. And that is, it's about a 3-year learning curve into being an academician, because there's no such thing as PA educator school. Most of the people who are teaching in PA schools are clinical PAs. We were taught medicine just like all the other PAs, and we had to transcend into academia. And it's a bigger learning curve. I'm sure as anyone who has made the transition, probably even more than they realized when they started into education that it was going to be. And so the fact that the educators have been with the program or in education for a period of time is really important from the perspective of the education that students get.
Yes, yeah. It's uncanny, because I had a previous program I worked at where we had, at one point, 4 of our 8 or 9 faculty had been high school teachers before they became PAs. There's an extraordinary palpable difference. So I think you're right. It does take that 3 to 5 year range to get through the cycles a few times and really polish up. Chandra, can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be in obviously you've been there since 2012, but from an outside perspective, you're in the Cleveland metro area, just southwest of Cleveland. So I would presume that offers you a lot of metropolitan, city-based clinical experiences and hospitals and things like that. Talk a little bit about the advantages of being in that area.
Yeah, to your point, it is a huge advantage. And we have huge hospital systems here. So we have, in our area, it's Cleveland Clinic, of course, who probably everyone's heard of. We have university hospitals, Metro Health, Summa. So we have all of those huge institutions here. Now, one of the struggles with that is while they are all here, you also have, it draws a lot of learners to the area. So you also have a lot of people vying for those clinical sites. And you have medical students and nursing students and nurse practitioner students. So you do have a lot of learners competing for those sites. But I know a lot of our students, when they come to the program, they really want to do rotations at places like Cleveland Clinic, because even if they're not staying in the area, which the majority of our students do, but even if they're not, that's a great thing to have on your resume, to have some of those high-profile institutions there. And they're great learning institutions as well. And they're seeing so many interesting things. These are the hospitals that some of the smaller satellite hospitals are transferring patients in that are more complex. So they really get some great clinical experiences.
Like most PA programs, there are many applicants to your program each year. What are the things that you feel maybe set an applicant apart? How might an applicant who's considering attending your program, what might they do to prepare themselves to be a competitive applicant for Baldwin Wallace?
Phil, I would first off say that we feel that our admissions process has been pretty successful, very successful. We feel that we get great students. We not only have great pass rates on PANCE, but I feel like we have developed a relationship with a lot of the preceptors in the area that some of them will say we will only take BW students. So we're very proud of that. That said, we feel our admissions process works well, and I would love to tell you that we have this super in-depth, holistic process that we go through, and we always say we need to incorporate more of that. However, we have an algorithm that we use, and a lot of it is objective criteria that kind of, I would say, get your foot in the door. So that's going to be things like GPA, science GPA, overall GPA. We do look at GRE scores just as another objective measure. Beyond that, then at the next tier, the next level, then we start looking at other things like healthcare experience is a big one we look for. We'd love to have a diverse class in terms of healthcare experience because obviously that helps the students learn from each other. We don't require healthcare experience, but we do prefer it. And then in our interview process, I think we do tend to look at other things than just past experiences, why someone wants to be at those sorts of things.
Chandra, we always like to give our guests an opportunity to wrap up with any other points they wanted to share about the program or any other comments they wanted to make before we close.
I felt like I pretty much had an opportunity to say just about everything. We are a 24-month program. We feel that works well. We feel that's a good selling point for us. And again, I think we're the kind of program we take about 35. We're going to go up to 40 students in 2025, but 35 to 40 students a year. And we're looking for students that we don't want a competition among students. We really want that collaboration. And again, not to be corny, but we really have a family feel to our program and a really close relationship with a lot of our alumni who it's super fun because then they come back to do lectures in a few years in their various areas of expertise. They serve as preceptors for us. They come back to help with checkoffs. And that's really important to us, just to maintain, again, that kind of family feel to our program.
You hit on a key thing that we've talked about throughout the entire history of our podcast, which is precepting and how important it is that our grads be part of the solution. So how do you do that? How do you set the tone for your graduates to give back like it sounds like they're doing?
We tell them from day one how important that is. And I think that in the didactic phase, when they have guest lecturers who are coming in, some of which are also precepting for our program and their former students, it almost makes it like a cool thing to do. Wow, I want to be like that person and come and give back and hang out with the faculty and that kind of stuff. So I think that they see that it can be a really positive thing and again, maintaining those ties with the program.
Yeah, that's great. Chandra, thank you so much for taking some time to share about Baldwin Wallace University and about your career. I know our listeners will be excited to hear about all the things going on at your school and also the Cleveland metro area. And we wish you and Jared and the team the very best.
Thank you so much.
We want to thank our guest, Chandra Lynch, for her time and insights into Baldwin Wallace University's PA program. We also want to extend a special thank you to Southern Illinois University Medicine online Doctor of Medical Science degree for their support of this podcast. Visit siumed.edu/DMSC to learn more and apply. Tune in next time as we speak with the leaders of our profession, both nationally and worldwide.